I see a lot of shop owners that struggle with this. They have a hard time trusting their employees to do things right. How did you get to that point where you could trust your people and actually let them go out and do the job you hired them for?
And when you're the boss, you're the last person that's gonna get told the truth. So for me, like turning that trust from truth, that separation was tough. But how we train too, man, is we do a 3-step process.
Today's guest is Krz Molyneaux, founder and CEO of KTS DIESEL Arizona in Phoenix. He shares how he scaled from one service truck to multiple locations and the lessons behind building trust, systems, and a business that lasts.
Tell me about this path. You started with a truck. How did you tackle some of those hurdles that most shop owners have?
We were just flooded with work and we had to start expanding and try to keep up with that expansion. And in the beginning, it was hard as hell. We were turning away work and you don't even know some of the work you're turning away because that could be a major account, but you're just like, hey, I can't even touch it today. And they're looking for today. And that's how we score a lot of our big customers is like, we were there for them that day and then they're like, hey, KTS is there, like call them again.
You've been at this, 16 years, you've built this. Being honest, what are you still struggling with though?
Here's how it goes.
Welcome to Beyond the Bay. I'm your host, Peter Cooper. And today I have a special guest with me, Krz from KTS. Thanks for being on today. Tell me a little bit about your shop and kind of your background.
Thanks, Peter, man. I really appreciate you having me on here. We're located in Phoenix, Arizona. We started in 2009 as basically one service truck. 2009 was the year where like everything, like the economy tanked, everyone got laid off. And we did too. So I had the idea to start my own thing and the opportunity was just like, where are you going to go? You know what I mean? Cause like no one was hiring. So the company that we worked for went under, which was a great company, mobile diesel repair as well. So what we did is I scooped up another tech that was a young buck like me. And then we grabbed the sales rep and we went after the accounts that were just going to get left floating. And we got the good ones. I mean, we had some decent accounts and we started with one truck. My partner lived on the completely other side of town. So early morning, I go pick his ass up and then we go tackle the day. And then that kind of turned us into 2 trucks, to a shop, to multiple trucks, to 2 shops. And then eventually we had 3, but we had shut the 3rd one down. It just wasn't making sense here locally. And we do mobile diesel repair. Maintenance is pretty much like our whole thing is keep it on the road. We turn and burn pretty quickly. Like we make the mobile mentality for our shop as well because people want to bring their truck to the shop and it sits there for a week. So mobile's always been same day repairs, get you in and out. We have the same mentality for our shops. As soon as because they're obviously heavier line repairs, so you're always waiting on parts or authorization. But we try to speed it up across the board. But yeah, we've been doing it 16 years and that's pretty much KTS right there, man.
So, tell me about this path. You started with a truck. How did you tackle some of those hurdles that most shop owners have? I mean, a lot of guys I talk to, they want to go to multiple locations. They want to go to multiple shops. What were some of the things that were paramount in being able to do those and be able to scale it and have it maintain itself?
Customers, it got to the point where like we couldn't work on their stuff at their yards anymore. Obviously you can't like insurance liability purposes, you couldn't do that. So we had to staff up, get a shop, you know what I mean? Like start training, which took years, dude. I mean, we're still like creating SOPs and fine tuning them. But like the whole process was like, we were just flooded with work and we had to start expanding and try to keep up with that expansion. And in the beginning, it was hard as hell. I mean, we were working, 18-hour days like normal business owners do for a long time, not making enough money in the beginning. But the work was always coming in. So we just had to keep going. And, trying to find the right people was really tough because people out of school, it seems like everyone that was coming out of school at the time, like say 15 years ago, like Cummins would scoop them up or they'd go to Knight or they'd go to like the bigger corps and they wouldn't even think about little guys. And for us, we had no time to train. So we're like, we need somebody who knows how to do shit, But then years later, we're like, hey, we need to slow down. We need to train these guys. We need to make sure they're doing the work that we do. And that created systems that we had to start nailing down, fine tuning, and make sure all our checklists are getting completed. They're not just checking boxes, and we just started going that route.
Yeah, I think that's hard. That's a valuable lesson for people that are growing their business is that you can grow too fast. And I've seen guys grow too fast and they have cash flow problems. I've seen guys grow too fast and they have employee problems. And then it becomes this massive thing that they never anticipated being a problem. And the next thing they look at it, they've got, 5 or 6 apprentices that work for them that don't know anything and they don't have a training program. And they think they can just go out and hire these unicorn mechanics, that can fix anything. And you give them a work order and it comes back fixed. And I'm like, I have to remind shop owners, those guys exist. They're your competition.
Yeah, that was the whole thing too, is like, we're always looking for us, you know what I mean? And us is the guy next door, like you're saying, like the guys that do what we do, they're running their own shop. And even if you have them for a stint, they're the ones that are just like, I'm gonna start my own shit. You know what I mean? So like
Right.
keeping those guys happy is really tough because they have a drive that just doesn't quit. And they have to do it to fail or they succeed. And those guys are who we are. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I tell shop owners too, don't be afraid. If you hire a guy and you actually have a real conversation, which I encourage shop owners to do, because you really need to hire on attitude and aptitude and stop hiring out of desperation for what the guy can fix today. And if you're having that conversation and you talk to him and he says, yeah, I want to start my own business in 4 or 5 years, that's the guy you want to hire because that guy's going to break his back working for you. He's going to learn, he wants to learn to do things the right way. And I even had a guy who did that, who worked for me for years, went out on his own. I said, dude, I'll buy your first service truck for you. Like, I'll feed you work. Like, I would love to have somebody I can call and give overflow to so that I still keep a reputation. And so I think a lot of shop owners need to look at that as a positive and stop thinking it's a negative.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're always looking for, like, when we're busy, I mean, that's like we're turning away work and you don't even know some of the work you're turning away because that could be a major account, but you're just like, hey, I can't even touch it today. And they're looking for today. And that's how we score a lot of our big customers is like, we were there for them that day. And then they're like, hey, KTS is there, like call them again. So yeah, to have a overflow like that would be nice. Um, and that, that's the struggle too. Is just like, where are these guys at that will still answer their phones? Because the guys that are busy is all hell. They're not going to call you back. You know what I mean? They're not going to team up with you because they're one guy in a truck working 18 hours a day and they can't even afford, there's no time in their day to take on what you can give them.
Well, and I think where it starts is you have conversations with people when you can. You do it at the park store, you do it at the bank, you do it wherever you meet them. And I tell people, look, you've got to build relationships before you need them. Like you may not think you need this one-man band that's got a service truck today, but you could really build something special with your competition. You could actually use them as a resource. And I've done this in different industries and multiple different times. And I've done it with service truck guys. And I was talking to a guy one time that was an independent. We were we were at the truck stop. It was like -10 and everything in the world's come to a stop. So we're all at the truck stop at the same time. And I'm chatting with the guy, while we're waiting for something to charge. And he's like, yeah, man, I don't know how you do it. You got this nice truck. He says, I can't afford any of this stuff. Well, why not? I said, what are you charging an hour? Well, I'm charging this. He said, well, that's why you can't afford anything. So I literally gave the guy business advice. And I'm like, look, just do this, do this, do this. People are still going to say yes when you call. I know that. And that's a big thing. So many owners, operators, they manage from a place of fear. They fear that if they charge what they have to charge to make a profit, that people will leave. They're afraid that if they have a hard conversation, people will leave. They're afraid if they raise the rates, their customers will leave. And maybe some will, but the good ones probably won't. And they're reasonable. I mean, I'm not saying you got to jack your prices up 25% and they're going to stay. But I think, we're coming into the new year. I think every shop out there needs to look at their rates and say, have I raised my rates? You got to do it at least once a year. I tell guys you should really reevaluate it 4 times a year, do it quarterly. That way you can raise it incrementally, 25 cents or 50 cents an hour. That way you're not raising it, $10, $15 an hour.
Yeah, the little chunks, it is easier to swallow than the whole enchilada end of the year or whatever that they're doing.
Right. Well, and if you have good customers, they're business owners too. And I get they have people they have to answer to and nobody wants to get their rates raised. But probably 90% of the time, we'll tell a customer we're going to raise the rate. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah. We you're still cheaper than Cummins. So yeah, absolutely. No problem.
Totally.
So tell me some of the, one of the things that we talked about in the pre-interview was trust and, trusting your employees and that. And I see a lot of shop owners that struggle with this, that they have a hard time trusting their employees to do things right and allowing employees to do things, which keeps guys, way tied back. How are you handling that? Like, how did you get to that point where you could trust your people and actually let them go out and do the job you hired them for?
Well, it was really hard, Peter, because like growing up, like in my household, there was a thing called truth. And you told the truth, you wouldn't be in as much trouble. My parents beat that in our heads from day one. If we fessed up when we messed up, and we just had to take accountability from go. And they're like, no, that's fine. Like, yeah, I understand. We'd get through it. And obviously I had a good career before I started my own business, and I was an employee once. So my hard thing was like getting back into that realm of, I thought everyone was on the same realm of like, you just tell the truth. You know what I mean? So like when you're the boss, you're the last person that's going to get told the truth. Like someone needs a day off, they're going to bullshit their way out. Oh, I'm sick or whatever. So for me, that was a hard disconnect. So I was like, screw this guy. I can't trust him. Like I saw him out at the bar or whatever. Um, so for me, like turning that trust from truth, that separation was tough, but that's where it was. Like, I trust this guy to do the job right. I know he's going to be here on time 90% of the time. Is he going to tell a white lie probably to like get a day off work or whatever may came up? Yeah, sure. But like that, for me, that was a tough one because I was like gung ho, like, you got to tell me the truth on everything. So once I got over that, trust versus truth was a big one. That's where I started leading more with trust and being like, I, all these guys, I trust them all, like that they can call me anytime. I'll be right there. I can call them anytime. They'll be right here. That's like our whole mentality. Like, even if you're not on call, you're going to answer your phone, help a guy out, so giving them more than they can handle or more than they're comfortable with is like my whole MO. It's like, yeah. One thing I tell my guys I don't want to ever hear is like, I've never done this before. Yeah, no shit. You've never done this before. Like, this is learning. If you're not learning, you're not growing. And I'm growing all these techs, man, because I don't want them just to come in and like learn how to do brakes. We're bumper to bumper, dude. So like we do everything and a lot of different units. We don't specialize in Freightliner or international, like everything's different. So like lead with the trust is just like, here's the thing, here's an SOP on it. If you have any questions, reach out. But how we train too, man, is we do a 3-step process. Watch me do it. We do it together, and then we watch you do it. And then from that's kind of how we build the trust. Be like, you should know how to do it. Obviously, there's always the refreshers that are like, well, you've already done this 3 times. What the hell's going on? You're not following the rules. You're not following the checklist. But that's the management side that's always going to be there. Guys have bad days, tough weeks. Shit's going on in their lives. It comes to work.
I've got a firm belief that trust is a two-way street. And you talk a lot, you said that you got to fess up if you mess up. I think I want to encourage a lot of owners that you have to admit to your employees if you mess up. And what I mean by that is trust is a two-way street and it's earned. And it's also about accountability. And I think owners have to understand that, yes, your employees are accountable to you, but you are accountable to your employees. And so, I mean, do you have any examples of that you've had to deal with in your business where you had to own up to your employees about something that just didn't work out?
A million times. A million times. My bank account shows it too. Yeah, I mean, if I made the wrong call, that I'm the first one to get blamed across, like not to get blamed, but to take blame across the board. Because if they mess up, I mess up. Like if they mess up, it's not them, it's the system. We didn't like the training, like the follow-ups, the everything, like we have to reevaluate. And for me, it's always on my shoulders to be like, well, shit, where can I improve this? Where did I go wrong? Yeah, I mean, I let a kid rebuild an engine one time because, he was up to par. He's rebuilt a couple. And then what was it? He had a ring in backwards, right? So like it was making a popping noise. And I came in that weekend and I just tore it all down, found out what it was, re-ringed it, like the whole rebuild in a week. It took a day to rebuild it all. And that was my bad because I was just like, this was like your first solo and no one looked over like your rings before you installed them. Like it was just a quick little oversight that we didn't catch, that I didn't catch. So those were the little things that were just like, damn it, like that one ring out of that whole rebuild was on wrong. And we had to redo the whole thing because we didn't know what cylinder it was or anything.
Yeah, and that happens. And I think those are valuable lessons to owners when they're trying to go to multi-locations, is that you have to accept that probably you're going to hire people that are only going to be 80% as good as you. And you have to build a system that's okay with that. And I know that's a crazy concept to understand, that human beings aren't perfect, But that's the reality of it. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn, was that, these people are not me. They're not going to own it the way I own it, because it's my shop. It's not their shop. They're not going to be here 7 days a week. They're not going to be here 14 hours a day. They're not going to miss. I had a knockout, drag out fight with one of my employees because he wouldn't miss Valentine's Day one year, and I couldn't comprehend why he wasn't working. Like, you got to get these things as owners. And I think a lot of owners wait and learn these lessons the hard way. And, going along with that, I wanted to ask you about growth. You have 2 locations now and you're mobile. What do you say was the thing that, I mean, if you know it, what was your turning point when you knew you were ready to have a second location? And how did you do that?
Supply and demand, I guess. It was more like, because we started over in Chandler and a lot of our clientele was in Phoenix. So the gripe was always, oh, I got to go drive out to Chandler to get my truck picked up. Because there's only 2 of us at the time over there. So that was where it's just like, well, okay, let me see if we can streamline this a little bit more to have a shop more centrally located, which we had to do. But we were fortunate enough to have Chandler still, because Chandler's blowing up with a lot of industrial now. 15 years ago, there wasn't anything out there. But yeah, it was more like the gripe. We made it happen, and then we scaled it from there. It was more like, do we have enough customers? Do we have enough techs to fulfill like this other location? Does it make sense on paper? And then it's like, well, like, how can we improve this? Can we make it to where we're making money? The ROI on another location is extremely low at first. Like, you're in the hole for a while. And until you like get everything built up, so you have to run it lean as hell. And then once you can like staff it up, that's when like you're turning the profit. And that was the big one, just like, well, when the hell are we going to turn a profit? And I think that's what I see in a lot of people that do multiple locations. There's like, well, this is never going to happen, so I'm going to shut it down. Because you got to stick it out. You know what I mean? You got to have that capital to make sure that you deliver on that other location. And that was a tough one for us, for sure. But we made it happen.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that I advise clients on, is a lot of them do have this dream of having multiple locations. The first thing I tell them to do is go on vacation. So, do you need to disappear for 2 weeks? If you can't disappear for 2 weeks, you're not ready to have 2 locations, because it means your business can't run without you. And the other thing I remind them of is exactly the point you're making, and that's that you need 6 months or a year of not making any income off that property. And if you can't survive that, meaning if you're starting a new one from scratch, that may not work for you, especially if you're going to go to a new city that you're not in. Like, having 2 locations in the same metro area, that's probably a little bit harder to absorb, because you can just shuffle customers, which I've done in locations. But if you're looking at going to another city, because maybe you've capped out your current market, that's a big jump. I mean, you're talking about starting basically from scratch, So owners really have to look at that and understand, do you have the money to do it? Otherwise, I tell people probably the best thing you can do is go find an owner finance deal and buy somebody else's shop that's retiring. There's a whole bunch of guys out there that are retiring. Nobody wants their business. It's crazy in this day and age. People still haven't woken up to the new wave is going to be blue collar work. That's where the money's going to be. There's no money in coding. There's no money in accounting anymore. I talk to graphic artists every day that can't find a job. And they're like, well, I can't find a job. I went to school for all these years. Well, yeah, because you can just put it into AI, and in 5 seconds, it'll give you a picture that does exactly what you want. But my point is that it is possible to grow. You don't have to do it organically. You can actually go out and buy a business that already exists. And you can, almost 80% of them, you can get the seller to finance it. Because a lot of them honestly don't want that cash because they don't want to pay all the taxes on it. So they'll take payments. I mean, it's an awesome opportunity for guys looking to expand.
100%, man. I mean, the baby boomers are like, they're almost done with their business, so you can pretty much pick it up for nothing. I mean, I know a guy, he was multi-million-dollar business, and he was in business for 15 years. He tried to sell it to some big corps, and he didn't really have any assets to go along with it. He had these great accounts, but like no assets. And they wanted like 10 techs from him. They wanted all this stuff. And then he basically told it, like, he hired a GM, brought him in, didn't work out. And he told his whole team's like, hey, this time next year, if one of you is not running this, I'm closing it down. And he just shut it down, dude. Like, he was just like, this guy, he was all heart. You know what I mean? Like, he had a good business. He's burnout. You know what I mean? Like 15 years in any industry, like, it'll burn you. And he just got that far to where he still had a decent business. He just didn't have anybody to run it. And like that, if he would just put it up and like, he's got like $500,000 in inventory he's still trying to get rid of, dude. Like, it's really a mess because he had shit to sell, but now he's got no clients. Like, so it's like you're better off like financing somebody or like finding somebody that you can work with, because I mean, that's how we did it. We bought another business a couple of years ago, and it was a shit show because the guy was the same boat. He was all burnt out. He didn't want to do any no training. We just thought we could absorb and like just get the staff on, bring him in, systemize it, and like, we got this. We were just cocky as hell, a little too cocky, and it didn't work out. The techs were just like, screw this, because they were the ones that wanted that business, and they didn't have a pot to piss in, so they weren't even in the boat to buy it. So yeah, you can definitely, there's deals out there. I mean, I tell people all the time, like, you don't need a broker. You don't need to do all this stuff, honestly. If you sit down and you go to these business owners and you're like, hey, before they even put it on the market, bullshit with them, because that's where it's all at, because that's where you're like, hey, I can, if you keep on, stay on, like, you work your deal, it will definitely make sense.
I think there's a valuable lesson in that, though, and that's that you don't have to go conventional. You don't have to go to a business broker and get a loan and do all that. Now, I'm not against that, because it's kind of like a realtor. You don't know what you don't know. And I've seen people go in and buy businesses and not know, what they're doing, because they've never bought businesses before, and they don't understand, EBITDA and evaluation, and how the fact that you're going to go get a bank loan, and can you even get a loan on this business? But there are a lot of deals, especially, this is just another reason to be really close with your competition. Someday that guy that's your competition, that's got a great run business, is just going to have enough. And he's like, I don't want this anymore. And if you know these people and you've had conversations about what you're wanting to do, that guy's probably going to reach out to you and at least have a conversation. And there are so many seller finance deals out there that you don't have to pay these crazy interest rates to go to a bank. And it's hard. It's hard to go to a bank and get a $5 or $6 million loan to buy a business, or even $1 million loan if you've never done it before. But at the same token with that, I think there's a valuable lesson for current owners. And that is that if your business cannot run without you, if you don't have a solid plan, if you're not financially secure, and you don't turn a profit, no one wants to buy a job. Well, most people don't. There might be a few people exceptions, but generally speaking, people with that kind of money want to buy an ATM. They want to buy something that prints money. And I've even done it myself. I mean, here in Des Moines, when I worked for Merck's, we bought a massive facility, 50,000 square foot body shop. We bought it for less than the real estate was worth, and we got the business for free, because the owner did not want to sell it to a real estate developer that was going to fire everybody. He wanted it to continue to run as a business, but the business had no profit. It had all these assets, and it had business, but they could never make any profit. So no one would buy it, because nobody wants to buy a job. Like, how many people do you know that have $5 million to spend, that want to go spend $5 million to buy something to have to fix?
Yeah, not a one. Nope.
And that's what I'm trying to do, honestly, with this podcast, is show owners and people out there, this is what's coming. You are not going to live forever. And I even tell owners too, I've had tight conversations, said, what happens if you get hit by a bus tomorrow? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, what are you leaving for your wife and kids to deal with? If this business is ran as poorly as I'm seeing it ran, like, what are they going to have to deal with if something happens to you?
Totally. I mean, I had a big wake up call when I got in a motorcycle accident years ago, because I destroyed my foot, reconstructed surgery on my foot, external fixations. I was out for 3 months. Couldn't even really get out of the house because I was so paranoid. Like, I have uncles and dads that are all one leg because motorcycle accident. So external fixation, I didn't want any like nasty shit getting in there. So that was a realization to me to like, hey, we need to create these systems, which we call our MIAs, basically missing in action. No show out of the blue, or they're out for a week. Like, who's in charge of what? Because my whole pet peeve is like, you talk to a business, you deal with businesses, they're paying late. You call them up, you're doing the due dilly of like, hey, you're late, we're going to submit late fees. And they're, well, the person that cuts the checks is on vacation, or the person that signs the checks on vacation. Yep. I always hated that. And I'm like, nope, not this business. Like, I want this thing to run without me. So that's why we created the MIA plans, which is like, even when I'm out, everyone knows who's in charge of what, who's signing what. We're always fine tuning these things too. Like, things fall through the cracks still. Everything's just like a work in process. So I think having those things in check is really where it's at, because that's where you start stepping away a little bit more every day, every week. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think, I talk to owners, and I've given speeches on this. And I've had people come up to me and tell me, I don't want to be an absentee owner. I said, that's fine. Don't be an absentee owner. But the business has to be a business, and a true business means it runs itself. It doesn't rely on you. Because eventually, if you do that, and that's another thing too, when people have that mentality, I can usually look them in the eye and say, let me guess, you're between $3 and $5 million in revenue. And they're like, yeah, how did you know? And I said, because of you, because you're the roadblock that's stopping that business from reaching its potential. You're the stop sign, and you don't even see it because you're like a CPC in a Freightliner. You are the gateway that all the communication goes through. And if you're broke, guess what? The whole system's
Great
broke.
stops. 100%, dude. That's a good analogy, dude. No, that's great, man. Yeah, for sure. That's so true.
So, I got to ask you honestly, what even, you've been at this, 16 years, you've built this, being honest, what are you still struggling with though? I mean, what is your biggest struggle right now, if you're willing to share that?
I just have to work, dude. Like I'm a very physical dude, but nothing makes me sleep better than like getting in there and wrenching every once in a while because like that's where like if I do that for like 3 months, like the rest of the year I'm sleeping great. But if I'm just like thinking, overanalyzing, staying up all night, like I don't get that release. I work out like mad. I ride my bike all the time. But like it doesn't do the physical mental thing for me that wrenching always does. So that's where I'm like, I have my office, all that stuff's all like set. It goes great. And I'm just like, I have to get back in it because like I need this mental stimulation, I guess. And when I get back in, it's like, okay, now I'm seeing what needs updated, what needs that, what needs this. And that's kind of how we're always making it better. But for me, it seems like I think we're doing good and I'll step back. You know what I mean? And a little too soon, it seems like. And then things fall through the cracks. I get back in, repair, set back. You know what I mean? So it's just a cycle that I'm trying to correct, honestly.
Well, and I think a lot of that too is, and I went through the same thing. You have to be ready to be at that stage. Like as an owner, if you're not ready to put down the wrenches, stop forcing yourself to do it. When I owned a transportation company, I was having a really struggling time because it was a bus company. And I was really struggling. I could not keep up because finding someone that can work on a bus is very challenging. And so I actually went out and hired an office manager and I went back in the shop because I'm like, nope, this isn't my thing. I'm not ready for that. Like, I'm not ready to put down the wrenches. I just want to do it. It's what I enjoy doing. And even after my business was running itself, and even after I sold the business, I would still go to service calls on the weekends because I just really enjoyed being in a service truck. Like I love the dynamic of not knowing what you're going to find when you show up, the challenge of doing it, it just was still a thrill for me. So I liked it. And I think owners need to understand that's okay. It's okay that if you want to go still do that stuff, go do it. The big caution I give people, if you're going to do that, the minute you leave your office, you're an employee, which means you now have to play by the employee rules. You have to act like an employee. You have to do your work orders like the employees have to do the work orders. You have to basically fill that role and follow the rules, because when you don't do that, I call that meddling. Owners get bored, they leave their office and they go play with stuff because they're bored, you know?
Yeah.
Part of the reason they're bored is because they're trying to force themselves to do the thing they shouldn't do, like doing accounting or something that they don't want to do, which is, by the way, a great tip for anybody out there. If you find yourself constantly procrastinating on a task, just go hire somebody to do it. I mean, seriously, your time is so much more valuable doing the thing that you enjoy and that you're good at versus forcing yourself to do something you hate to do and you're horrible at doing it.
Totally.
Krz, thanks for being on today. I appreciate, the insight that you have into running multiple locations and growing a business organically from scratch. And those insights are very powerful. And thank you very much for being on today.
Peter, you're awesome, man. I mean, I love what you're doing. We need more people like you. We've always needed people like you in this industry, dude. It's getting the voice out there. Let everyone know that they're not alone, dude. Like this type of stuff didn't happen 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, dude. Like everyone's just so like tight vested and no one wants to no one wants to team up, dude. Like no one wants to even have the conversations because they're just like, oh, you're my competition. It's so old school, dude. And it's like, I hate that. Like I'm trying to surround myself with as many owners as I can because those are the mindsets that I get along with the most. And that's the networking that I think everyone needs because we all need to know a guy, and like, that's what I think is missing in a lot of this industry is like, it used to be like, hey, I know a guy. Hey, I know a guy. It's been to be like, oh, I can't trust anybody I know because they don't do good work or I can't refer them, So I think if we can get the referral stuff going again, that's what brings it all back to like the way it needs to be.
I do. And I encourage any business owner out there too, that if you want to dip your toes into it, you're willing to broaden your horizons and maybe, become a better business owner, is just join your chamber of commerce. You're not going to be joining it with all your competition. They're not looking for trade secrets. You don't have to go all the time. You can go to some of the events if you want, but it does get your name out there and it starts the process. That was kind of how I started, as I dipped my toes in it, got in the chamber. And actually it was kind of cool. I didn't even wasn't going to do it. One of my people I was doing business with said, "Hey, dude, you got to come with me to this. This is this great opportunity." And it's done a lot for me in my business, especially when I opened my second location with my transportation company. I already had a relationship with people in that city because I joined the chamber before I ever opened that location. So I already had built some relationships in that in that community and started to understand it because every little community is different. I mean, people think they got it figured out, and then you show up. It's like if you've ever moved towns, you figure out real quick you don't know what you think you do.
Right.
And so I think it's a really powerful thing to do. Also want to remind everyone that this podcast is free. We don't charge for it. There's a lot of good information on there. If you subscribe to it, you'll get notifications of when we release new podcasts. And also, anyone listening, if you want to be a guest, if you have a story to tell, reach out to me either on LinkedIn or through any of the podcast platforms. Send me a message. We'd be happy to talk because we really think what owners have to say is some very valuable things, and it's going to help all of us create a better industry.
100%, Peter. Right on, man.
Well, thanks for being on. I appreciate it.
No problem, buddy.